I grew up in a house where love came with conditions and praise had a GPA requirement. In our tidy neighborhood north of Seattle, success wore a tie, spoke in investment jargon, and drove a car with leather seats. My parents, Sylvia and Terence, weren't unkind, they were just allergic to uncertainty. So, when I told them I wanted to make music for a living, my mother blinked like she hadn't heard me right. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. Eli, my younger brother, knew better. By the time he was 16, he was already shadowing financial analysts for summer internships. He didn't rebel or ask questions, he just followed the blueprint. Ivy League degree investment firm, crisp suits. At every family dinner, he arrived with PowerPoint-worthy updates. Promotions, bonuses, downtown condos. Our parents drank it up like it was fine wine. Me, I brought my calloused fingers and second-hand guitar. I played small bars and open mics, dragging in less money than a teenager with a lawnmower. I loved it anyway. The rawness, the freedom, the way a melody could say things I couldn't. But to them, it was just noise, a phase I'd grow out of. I never did. The only person who seemed to believe I might be more than a mistake was Maris Lane. We met at a music cafe 2 years ago. She was there for coffee and quiet. I was the guy with an acoustic and nerves. She stayed the whole set. Afterward, she came up and said, "You don't play like someone who's lost." I think I fell in love right then. Maris was practical an accountant with a 401k and color-coded budgets, but she never made me feel small. She listened to every new track, every late-night ramble about what I was trying to say through a song. "You're not lost," she'd whisper. "You're just taking a different road." In a world that measured worth in paychecks and property, she made me feel seen. Still, even love gets tired of explaining itself, especially when everyone around you says it's not enough. And that's how we ended up at Thanksgiving, with my hand in hers and my heart bracing for the quiet disapproval waiting behind that front door. Thanksgiving at my parents' house always came with the same menu: roasted turkey, pumpkin pie, and just enough polite tension to choke on. But this year felt different. I had Maris beside me, her hand tucked in mine, her smile steady despite the nerves. I thought maybe this would be the year I didn't feel like an afterthought. Dinner started smooth enough. Eli was already there, of course, holding court about a new merger deal and some overseas investor dinner in New York. My dad leaned forward like he was at a TED Talk. My mom beamed like someone had just announced she was the mother of a senator. I tried to join the conversation, shared a story about a bar gig where someone sang along to a song I wrote. No one really responded. My mom offered a thin smile and passed the mashed potatoes. Maris, bless her, tried. She asked Eli questions, nodded at his stories, even laughed once or twice. She always knew how to bridge a gap. I watched her and thought, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe they'll see what I see in her, and maybe that'll be enough to see me, too. After dinner, I wandered toward the kitchen to grab more wine. The door was cracked just enough. I heard my mother's voice, low and syrupy, like she was offering Maris something delicate. "You're a sweet girl," she said. "But do you really think Rowan is right for you? He's creative, sure. But Eli has a future. He's stable. He knows how to take care of someone like you." I couldn't move. Maris didn't say anything for a beat, and when she finally did, her voice was soft. "Rowan's passionate. But yes, I worry sometimes." I backed away before I heard more. My chest ached, but I smiled through the rest of the night like nothing had happened. In the days that followed, something shifted. Maris canceled plans. Her texts came slower. She mentioned Eli more, his new place, his promotion, how he's got it all figured out. I told myself not to overthink it. But one night she showed up late for dinner, her eyes elsewhere, and when I reached for her hand, she didn't reach back. It was a Wednesday when I saw them, Maris and Eli, through the glass of a cafe she used to love. I'd gone there to surprise her with her favorite cranberry scone and maybe a second chance at something that felt like it was slipping. But instead, I stood on the sidewalk frozen in place as she leaned forward laughing at something Eli said. Her hand grazed his wrist like she didn't notice. But she did. And so did I. I didn't go inside. I didn't knock on the window or call her name. I just stood there long enough to feel the ache settle in, then walked away. 2 days later, I went to my parents' house. My mom was folding laundry on the couch. My dad looked up from the paper. I told them everything I'd heard over Thanksgiving, how they'd steered Maris toward Eli, how it had hollowed me out. I waited for one of them to look ashamed to say they hadn't meant for it to go that far. Instead, my father folded his arms and said, "We just wanted the best for her. Eli's a safer bet." My mother added, "He's ready for a future. You're still chasing a maybe." That was it. No apology, no regret. Just their quiet certainty that love should be practical and I was anything but. That night I packed a single suitcase, a few clothes, my guitar, my notebook. Everything else could stay. I had $1,700 in my account and no reason to keep circling a life that never wanted me in the first place. I didn't leave a note. I didn't text Maris. I booked a one-way bus ticket to Austin, Texas. I'd heard it was a city where music still mattered, where maybe someone like me could exist without apology. The rain followed me to the bus station. I stood there with my guitar case and backpack soaked, but strangely steady. When the bus doors opened, I stepped on board without looking back. As the city blurred past the windows, I told myself this wasn't running away. It was finally moving toward something, anything that didn't require me to be someone else. Austin wasn't what I imagined. The sun hit harder, the nights stretched longer, and the city's rhythm was faster than my pulse could keep up with. I knocked on every bar, every venue demo CD in hand, wearing hope like a badge no one asked for. Most shrugged me off. Some didn't even bother to lie. After 2 months, my savings were a whisper. I lived on dry toast and bulk coffee, slept on a mattress that sank in the middle. I almost gave up the day I saw a crumpled flyer at a bus stop Soundwell studio, hiring assistant. No experience required. I walked in the next morning shirt, tucked heart-pounding. The studio smelled like dust and old vinyl. Hank, the owner, looked up from a mixing board and asked, "What do you know about music?" I told him just enough to get a nod and a job that paid just above nothing. I swept floors, labeled tapes, kept my head down. But then she walked in Delia Voss. I knew her name before she said it. I'd heard it once years ago at a dinner table in Seattle. Eli had brought her home. Our mother hadn't liked her. Too wild, too opinionated, not wife material. She barely glanced at me that first day. She was focused, wired in producing, mixing, directing musicians like she was born with a metronome in her chest. I didn't plan to talk to her, but eventually we ended up stuck in the break room during a power outage, sipping lukewarm coffee by emergency light. "You're Eli Maddox's brother, aren't you?" she asked, voice flat but not unkind. "Yeah," I said. "You're Delia Voss." She let out a dry laugh. "Small world." Still carrying that family's shadow, I didn't answer. But over time, the silence between us softened. She let me watch her work. Then she taught me how to cut a track balance, a mix. Listen for emotion, not just pitch. "Music's not about being perfect," she said. "It's about telling the truth no one else dares to." I told her about Seattle, about Maris, about the kitchen door and the words that never left me. She nodded, didn't interrupt, just listened the way no one in my family ever had. We weren't friends yet, but we were something, two people who'd been quietly discarded, finding use in what others threw away. And that was how underdog music started, before it had a name, before we had a plan in a half-lit room filled with second chances. It started with a notebook and 2 borrowed microphones, We didn't have investors or a team or even a decent space, just a desk in the back corner of Soundwell's studio and an idea we couldn't shake. Delia called it underdog music, half joking at first, but it stuck. We knew what it felt like to be overlooked, and we wanted to build something for people like us. We reached out to unsigned artists, street buskers, bedroom producers, kids playing to empty rooms, but writing lyrics that left your chest aching. We promised them time, attention, and honesty. What we couldn't promise was money. Some said yes. A few believed in us as much as we believed in them. But most dropped out once they realized we couldn't offer more than grit and late nights. Still, we kept going. I worked side gigs at bars while Delia sold her car to cover a second-hand mixer. Some nights we didn't sleep. We ate ramen burned through our savings and talked each other off the ledge more than once. Around that time, a friend from back home posted wedding photos on social media, Eli and Maris under a canopy of string lights, her hand on his chest, like it had always belonged there. The comments were full of congratulations. My parents were tagged in a few smiling beside them like it was all meant to be. I stared at the pictures longer than I should have, waiting for some familiar ache to crawl back in. But it didn't. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. Delia found me staring at my screen in the studio's hallway. She didn't ask what I was looking at. She just handed me a coffee and said, "We have work to do." And we did. We built demos, rewrote tracks, sat on the floor, surrounded by cables, arguing about kick drums and compression. And somewhere between the music and the silence, we started to change. She'd brush past me, and I'd notice the way her hair curled at her neck. I'd hum something under my breath, and she'd stop what she was doing just to listen. It wasn't sudden and it wasn't loud, but it was real. And it felt nothing like the love I thought I'd lost. One night after our last artist packed up and the studio went quiet, Delia sat beside me, our shoulders touching, and said, "You know this thing we're building? It's not just music, it's us." The turning point came with a song called Blue Ashes. Arden Bloom recorded it in 2 takes on a rainy Tuesday, her voice cracking in all the right places. We almost didn't release it. Delia thought it was too raw, too quiet. But I said, "Let's risk it." And we did. 2 weeks later, it hit the indie charts. Local radio played it on rotation. A small feature in the Austin Beat called Arden, a Wildfire in Velvet. Underdog music was suddenly getting emails from artists we'd once begged to work with. And for the first time, I saw Delia lean back in her chair, eyes closed, and just breathe. We stayed at the studio past midnight most nights, perfecting mixes, answering press questions, lining up new projects. Somewhere between exhaustion and adrenaline, Delia turned to me and said, "We should host a showcase. Invite everyone. Show them what we built." I knew who she meant. Everyone included my family. I hesitated. Just hearing the words "invite them" made something old twist in my chest. But Delia didn't push. She just said, "You don't owe them anything, but you do owe yourself the chance to be seen." I thought about it for days, about the version of me they thought they knew about the man I'd become without their applause. Then I sat at my desk and wrote 4 short notes, one to my parents, one to Eli, and one to Maris. No explanations, no bitterness, just a simple invitation and a time. Delia mailed them without ceremony. We didn't speak about it again. Instead, we planned the showcase, secured a venue, coordinated lighting, coached our artists on stage presence. Mia, a shy 19-year-old who once trembled during rehearsals, would headline the night with 3 original songs. Arden agreed to do a surprise encore. We called it the Underdog Setlist. A week before the show, I received a call from my mother. Her voice was unfamiliar, tentative, cautious. "We'll be there," she said. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Not with fear, not even with hope. just quiet acceptance. The night before the event, Delia and I walked through the venue checking cables and scribbling last-minute notes. She stopped beside me under the stage lights and whispered, "This is it, Rowan. The before and after." The theater lights dimmed and the room pulsed with quiet anticipation. Backstage, I could hear the rustle of programs and the hum of small talk. Our lineup was tight, 6 artists, 15 songs, 1 story. Ours. I saw them before they saw me. Second row center. My mother in a pearl-colored blouse, her posture perfect. My father beside her, stone-faced but alert. Eli with a new haircut and the same practiced smile. And Maris, still graceful, still beautiful, but her eyes didn't scan the room like they used to. They stayed low, fixed on the stage, as if afraid to look anywhere else. The showcase opened with Arden. She owned the stage, a fire in her voice that cracked the silence wide open. Then came Mia, trembling until her second note, and after that, she was unstoppable. The audience rose to their feet twice before we ever walked out. When Delia and I finally stepped into the light, the applause was louder than I expected. We didn't talk about business plans or growth metrics. We told the truth, about how we started with nothing, about nights we worked through hunger and doubt, about betting on the voices no one else wanted to hear. I glanced at my family only once. My father's hands were folded jaw tight. My mother's eyes shimmered, but not from joy. Eli's smile had faded. And Maris, she just stared unmoving as if she couldn't place me. After the show, they found us in the reception hall. My mother reached for my hand. You did well, Rowan," she said, as if the words tasted foreign. My father nodded, but looked past me toward the stage. Eli stepped forward. "I've been having trouble with my firm," he said, voice lower now. "Maybe there's a way we could—" I stopped him gently. "I built this from the floor up." "You can too," Maris finally spoke. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to—" She trailed off. I nodded. "I forgive you. But that part of my life's over." They didn't argue, didn't ask for more, just stood there awkward and unsure while Delia came beside me and wrapped her fingers around mine. Later, as the venue emptied and the last of the stage lights flickered off, I stood beside her under the balcony. She leaned into me, soft and steady, and said, "Now they've seen you. The real you." It was a gray morning when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't saved but still recognized. I let it ring once, then twice before I picked up. Rowan, my mother's voice came through hesitant, quieter than I remembered. "I hope it's okay to call." I leaned against the window of the studio, watching traffic move slowly through the drizzle. "What's going on?" "It's Eli," she said. "His firm's collapsing. Some deal went sideways. And Maris, they're separated now. She's living with her sister. He's not himself." I didn't speak. She filled the silence. "He's lost. And, well, you've done so well. I thought maybe you could reach out, help him." I let the words settle. There was no anger in her tone, no demand, just exhaustion. I knew that feeling too well. "I'm sorry he's struggling," I said. "But I built this without anyone's help. He can do the same." She was quiet, and for a second I thought she'd hung up. Then came a soft sigh. "You've changed." "No," I said. "I just finally learned how to stay whole." I ended the call before she could say more. That night, Delia and I sat on the floor of our new apartment, still unfinished, half-furnished, but ours. I told her about the call, the tone in my mother's voice, the part of me that once would have dropped everything. She listened, then nodded. "You did the right thing." There was no celebration in her voice, just calm, just clarity. We didn't talk about Eli again. Not that night, not after. Some things don't need to be revisited to be resolved. I looked around the room, boxes stacked in corners, a chipped coffee table between us. And still, it felt like the safest place I'd ever been, not because of what we had, but because of who we'd become to earn it. Underdog music kept growing, but we never let it grow too far from who we were. Each new artist reminded us of the early days, the doubt, the rejection, the quiet faith. We took on projects that didn't promise money, but meant something. And in between deadlines and meetings, Delia and I kept choosing each other. Our relationship wasn't built on grand gestures, it was built on sharing the last bite of takeout, finishing each other's lyrics, knowing when to speak and when to simply sit beside one another. We didn't fall in love to be saved. We found each other when we had already learned how to survive alone. Some nights after the studio emptied, we'd sit on the balcony of our apartment. She'd hum an unfinished melody. I'd strum chords that didn't quite land, but still felt right. The city lights blinked in the distance, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was chasing anything. One night, as she rested her head on my shoulder, I asked, "Do you ever think about them?" About going back, she didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Not really. I think about where we are now, and I think that's enough." And it was. I didn't need Seattle's approval. I didn't need Maris Eli or my parents to say they were wrong. I had Delia. I had Underdog. I had peace. And I knew then, without doubt, we weren't trying to prove anything anymore. We were just making music for the ones who'd never been heard. Were you always this confident? The question came from a new artist, barely 20, voice like wind through leaves, scared to press record. I looked up from the console, caught the nervous glance, and smiled. "No," I said, nodding toward the corner of the studio. But I never stopped playing. The guitar leaned against the wall, old scratched, held together by tape and memory. It had followed me from Seattle to Austin, through failure, heartbreak, and every version of myself I didn't think would make it. I kept it there as a reminder not of where I came from, but of who I refused to let go of. We wrapped the session late. The artist left with a demo and a little more belief. I locked up, grabbed my jacket, and walked home under the soft hum of the Austin sky. Delia was waiting on the porch, feet tucked beneath her mug in hand. She didn't say anything, just looked up and smiled as I sat beside her. We didn't need to speak. We'd said everything already in songs in silence, in the way we chose each other every single day. I leaned back in the chair, let the quiet settle, and watched the city flicker through the trees. We had no applause tonight, no headlines, no audience. Just the sound of two people who finally belonged where they were.